I'm going to show you a drawing. It's a very professional drawing. There's a lot of intricacies that the common non-art affiliated person might not be able to get. So without further ado, here it is. I invite you to look at it and think about what you see. Take it in, grasp the enormous abstractness of it. And if you haven't figured out what this is yet, let me tell you. It's a portrait of myself that I drew when I was 10 years old. Yes, that's me when I was 10. So now you may be thinking to yourself, this guy should have really given up on art back then. He should have really packed it in and called it a day. But fortunately, or unfortunately, I didn't. And so over the years, I've kept sketching to my heart's content. So here's a drawing I made 2 days ago. This, too, is self-portrait. And if you keep this and the previous masterpiece side by side, you'll notice a very peculiar thing. While one has good shading, solid line work, and a near-perfect likeness to real life, the other has a very cool haircut. And to me, as a 10-year-old, this is what constituted humans, haircuts and fancy pants. So these are things that we did as children, right? We dabbled in the creative interests. We played with homemade toys. We had fun with clay. We made imaginary worlds to explore with our friends. So for some people, like me, that creative outlet meant drawing stickmen with cool hairstyles. For someone else, like you, it could be something completely different, like drawing stickmen with bad hairstyles. So, I'm sorry, it's really bad. But what happens when you grow up? What happens when, with time and a growing list of responsibilities, you wake up and you think to yourself, I don't want to draw a goofy character anymore. We've all been there. We all know the answer. That creative spark in a lot of us is long gone, snuffed out by the responsibilities that we have to shoulder as adults. Just ask yourself, when was the last time you consumed a piece of media? And when was the last time you created a work of art? There's a long gap between the two. We often take creative pursuits like poetry, art, and storytelling as hindrances, and we push them to the side, especially as we grow, to make room for other more quantifiable things in life, like tech and businesses and profits. And while those are nice, and while those are important, I'm here to tell you that art can help us enrich the way we think and allow us to look at the things that we do in entirely new ways and allow us to succeed professionally in the careers that we choose to follow. And so that's the topic that I'm going to be talking about today, coloring outside the box and how creative pursuits propel critical thinking. 5 years ago, I was in 12th grade. And as part of our syllabus, we learned about scientific concepts developed by scientists of history of years past, such as Galileo, Da Vinci, Ibn al-Haytham, and more, people who have had staggering impact on the history of science. And so we learned a lot about the things that they did. Now, can you see something that's very common between these three? They all have amazing beards, that's true. But facial hair aside, there's also one trait that's in common between them. They are all polymaths. Their interests were wide-ranging. And so they weren't singularly focused. Apart from being great scientists, they were also philosophers. They were writers. They were thinkers. They used their artistic edge to propel the discoveries that they would have made, otherwise not made without them. Now, coming back to my high school days, our teachers were helpful souls. They impressed on us the importance of focusing on our academics, as they should. But implied within these instructions was an aversion to choosing anything remotely off the beaten path. And so what this meant was that as students, we shunned the multifaceted glory of these polymaths genius and instead learned about them in a very one-dimensional manner, learning only about the traits that were relevant to our exam syllabus and conveniently ignoring everything else. So as students, what did this mean? This meant that we put our academic interests into small little boxes, and we label them according to the careers that we plan to take. Engineers would have boxes filled with subjects such as physics and maths and computer science. Doctors would have boxes filled with different aspects of biology, pharmacology, chemistry, and more. And business students would have boxes with the names of the engineers and the doctors so that they could hire them in the future. I'm just kidding. Business students would probably sell their boxes. The thing is, Why are we talking about boxes now? That's because in today's society, to a large degree, our success professionally depends on the skill set that we possess. This metaphorical box of which creativity and critical thinking are an integral part. If you consider this, then you come to realize that this discussion on creativity and critical thinking is also a larger discussion on generalization versus specialization. That is, having knowledge on a wide variety of topics versus having a specialized and deep knowledge on one particular topic. In a world where every niche that we can think of is exploited, where every task, big or small, is automated, in such a hyper-specialized world, it is the generalist who thrives. Now, where do we start? By incorporating these values. How do we take creativity and put it into a system where we learn about it? We start at the grassroots, of course. We all know about STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. But how many of us know about STEAM, where the A stands for art, not Apple? And what this means is that basically it's a system of education where the arts and consequently the humanities are deeply embedded, ingrained into the syllabus, given equal footing with the existing STEM subjects. And what this does is produce students who are more open to collaboration, who are more experiential, who are more experimental, and overall become more better, well-rounded thinking individuals. And this does not need to be something that should be relegated to the student populace. As adults, if we begin to dabble in our creative interests and encourage creative expression as a whole, what we'll understand is that we will be allowing ourselves to make more mistakes. And as a consequence, we come to a very important realization that doing so, we understand that failure is not an unaffordable luxury, but a stepping stone that acts as a pathway to our success. Now, STEM, in other words, is like taking Shakespeare and teaching him calculus. It's a very effective way of starting from the grassroots and taking it all the way to working professionals. The dynamics of today's job market is changing, and basic cookie-cutter jobs don't cut it anymore. If you want to open the right locks, you need to have a varied set of tools. I have had the opportunity to work across a wide variety of domains: journalism, graphic design, research, and computer science, to name a few. And if there's one thing that I've learned working across all these domains, it's that relegating yourself to being a one-trick pony can be dangerous. Because when the change inevitably comes, you won't expect it. And if you don't expect it, you won't be able to accept it. If there's one thing I can end on, it's this. Life gives us all a metaphorical box. We all have to carry it and go on with our lives. And although we may not be able to choose the cards that we're dealt or the tools that we have in our box, I'm here to tell you that if you step outside of your box, look at the world, and paint a picture that you think is cool, regardless of what anyone else has to say, you're going to make a painting, and consequently, a story that's 1,000 times more amazing than anyone else could ever possibly imagine. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I'm Mazin Iqbal.